I just want to welcome you to The Uncommon Truth. Today we've got two amazing men joining us again. We've got Bob Embry and Tony Holbrook. Both of these guys are good friends, and we're enjoying this journey of asking the hard questions, seeking to find the answers, and ultimately persevering and knocking so that we find the uncommon truth. Last time we spoke, we talked about fear and the effects of fear and just how it really affects our life every day. Today, we're going to lead into a few other questions that kind of left a platform for us to jump off and into. And the first question we're going to talk about today is, how do we improve the quality of our life? The second question is obsession really required to be our best? And lastly, what does the ideal form of life mean, and what is yours? So that sets us up, guys, for a great conversation here over the next couple hours, and I'm pretty excited. It's definitely an interesting time, and our quality of life has definitely been affected, drastically affected. Movement is changing, the economy is changing. Obviously, the COVID-19 crisis pandemic is affecting every single one of us around the world. And it hasn't been since World War II where there's been a global incident of this magnitude. Whether you believe everything that we've been are being told, or you believe in conspiracy theories or not, it's affecting us all. So how do we improve our quality of life? Bob, I'd like to ask you that question first.
Oh, good. Thanks, Heath. Good to be with you guys today. The fact is that we live in we really are tremendously blessed to live in this in Western society. So we're speaking from the Lower Mainland in Vancouver. Canada is one of the best places rated consistently to live in the world. So it's really difficult actually not to live a good life in Canada. There's opportunity for jobs. There's opportunity for a lot of freedom. There's opportunity to connect with people. Tons and tons of opportunity out there. That being said, you would say there's always room for improvement, and especially in times like this, there's big challenges, right? And even when there's opportunity, it doesn't mean that we reach out and grab the opportunity, or when we take the opportunity, it works out for us. So even though we live in a very rich society with lots of opportunity, it's sometimes very, very emotionally difficult. It's sometimes financially difficult. It's sometimes relationship-wise, it's very difficult. So the quality of life for me is an ongoing kind of rolling platform. What I experienced in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s were all different. And even now, we were talking just a couple of seconds ago, and Tony's got young children, and my children are all grown up, and we're experiencing totally different worlds, quality of life, right? Mm-hmm. So when I think about quality of life, I think about things like the different sections that are in a life. What's my financial needs like? How can I improve that? What are my relationship needs like? What's my love life like? What's my friendships like? What's my recreation like? Leisure and recreation and adventure quotient. What's my health like? Very big as well, right? So probably 7 or 8 major categories in life. That's, when I wake up in the morning, I start to write what I want to do during the day. That's the list of things that I'm going through, my 7 or 8 things. What am I going to do to build a relationship with a wife? What am I going to do to touch base and build relationships with my children? What about my friends? What about my health, my fitness level, my nutrition level? What about my adventure? What about my leisure? So those are the major topics and that I go through each and every day, and I try to live that week by week. So for fitness, I want to make sure I get a certain amount of fitness every week. I certainly want to have a certain amount of touch points with my kids that are out of the house now, right? Every week, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the things that I'm looking at each and every day, and I'm taking I'm actively planning and actively doing things to move those things in a positive direction.
Nice. That's really well summarized. Tony, how about for you, bud?
Yeah, I like Bob. I like what you said there, sort of about how it's different for every person, and kind of as you were mentioning that, I was just kind of reflecting on, okay, so like what is quality of life for me? And I think it ultimately breaks down into sort of three buckets, and the certainty is, especially in this time, I'm kind of finding that certainty is a big kind of factor of quality of life, and certainty plays into a bunch of things, right? Do you have a home that is in disrepair or in need of a bunch of things, or is it, good and going to stand up if there's storms or whatever, right? Financially, of course, do you have a savings account? Do you have an income? Do you have a stable job? Do you have means to produce income, etc., right? And so, certainty is a big piece of it. Family / support structure. Family can come in a bunch of different ways. So I definitely wouldn't pigeonhole family being blood relatives, because a lot of people, I found this when I moved down to California. It was just myself and my wife and our kids, and we had no family around or anything like that. And quote unquote family became the people that we could trust to babysit our kids or leave our kids with, that shared the complex with us, or that we could, trust to watch our kids in the pool or something like that. So there's family and support side of things. And then I think there's kind of health and wellness, which is just kind of how good you feel, right? And, whether you're, mentally good and physically good and all of those sorts of things. And so, much like you said, Bob, how you kind of plan it out every day, my days are sort of pre-planned. I try to be a creature of habit in a lot of ways, where I want to wake up and I want to have as minimal decisions as possible. Like I wear like black V-neck t-shirts, like I've got a stack of them, and it's kind of cliche, but it's the easiest thing to do. I wake up in a pair of jeans and a black t-shirt, and it's good for most scenarios, right? And so I build kind of around those three main factors around the health and the wellness. I plan my daily workouts in, around the family. I figure out when I'm spending the time in with the family. That's not on a daily basis, unfortunately, but on a weekly basis, I kind of try to average it out if possible. And then the support and the certainty side of things, right? Making sure that the income is there and all the bills are paid and all of that sort of stuff, right? And so I find that the easiest way for me to improve that quality of life is to put in those ritualistic habits and sort of build it around those three big pillars. It's kind of where I focus.
Wow.
Good.
So, what I find amazing is just how we are all connected. We're all aligned in the way that we're thinking here, because I have basically similar views as you. And in my own words, how do I improve the quality of my life? I always am striving to ask better questions, because the quality of my life is directly related to the quality of the questions I'm asking, first and foremost of myself. And what I've learned through that is that common sense is uncommon. And that starts with me. There's times I go, do I really think that? Oh my gosh. So always seeking that wisdom for me is really it. And that, how do I do it is I as well, like you both, put it into chunks or buckets. And we'll talk later about what the form of life really means, but my form is broken into 4. I'm not smart enough to deal with 8 or these big chunks. So it comes into, it's family and friends, relationships. It's the occupation, the work and wealth. It's the recreation, health and wellness. And lastly, motivation, that education, that growing the mind, which leads to my beliefs and then ultimately into my heart, and then shows up in my hands as my action, right? So our head drives the heart, which is our feelings, drives our motion, or as Tony said it, emotion drives motion. Mm-hmm. So how do we get along this road, which you both have addressed, is our human needs. And that for me, as a man, and I haven't met many that, as you so well put, Tony, that don't have a need for certainty and or significance, the driving need within their life. That need to provide makes us feel significant or certain. And the whole world, the economy runs off those two needs and meeting those needs. And that's where we spend our money. most of the time. So how do we improve our quality of life is, I think, something for us to really talk to. And what are those needs that we each have and those driving needs? So I'm going to maybe tee up that as another kind of question. We've all sort of discussed it, and I'll just put it to a parameter of 6 human needs: the need for certainty, need for variety or adventure, the need for significance, the need for love and connection. Those are our primal needs, and they're going to be met constructively or destructively. And whenever I'm doing something, whether it be in an argument with someone, or I'm supporting someone, or whether it's good or bad, if I ever just want to know why I'm doing it, I just need to ask, what of these needs are driving it? So that's the primal needs. But there are what I call, and Tony Robbins actually taught me this, the fulfillment needs, and that's growth and contribution. And the reason they're called fulfillment needs is there's no way to feel sad, mad, when you're growing and progressing, or when you're contributing and giving to people. And I just find that such a unique thing, that if we can shift the primal needs, which are self-focused, into intelligent selfishness, which is the growth and the giving, that's where I'm finding where I really am feeling progress, I'm feeling fulfilled, and I feel like I'm having a quality life. I'm bringing value. So that's a little bit of a preamble into how do we discuss that? How do we affect change and growth? And what are we going to do as men to just meet not just the basic needs of food and water and shelter, but our human needs to live a quality life? So back to you, Bob.
Good, Heath. Very nice summary of these words, human needs. Right. A lot of people aren't aware of that. We have these seven primary needs of certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, affirmation, growth, and contribution, as you just summarized. So if a person doesn't understand that those are the underlying drivers of what we do, and if they don't understand what their specific drivers are at this specific time in their life, then it can create confusion for their actions. So, and maybe I'd like to ask both of you this right now. What are your primary drivers right now? Is it certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, affirmation, growth, and contribution? Of course, and I'm asking you what your primary drivers are right now, or at least to think about it. So right now, for me, it's the need for significance is primary in my life. I'm at an age right now where a lot of the basics of certainty are in place. Tony was talking about the rituals and the routines and the habits being like it's already mapped out for him for a day. Those are pretty well mapped out for me. Like my financial situation, the where I live, my location, it's pretty certain about what I'm going to be doing for the next 5 years, given health, et cetera, right? Yeah. So what I do with my time each and every day now, I would say probably 60% of my time, making up a number there, has to do with me dealing with this issue of significance. Like, what is my legacy? What's my purpose? What's my mission? How am I going to have an impact on other people? Which kind of leads to my second driver, which would be contribution, right? Being useful, valuable, having a positive impact, having a positive benefit. So I want to be doing things now, whether it's meeting with a client, doing this a webcast, whatever it is. Those are probably the two most important things for me. So knowing that, right, knowing that those are my needs and thinking about those as my needs, it really does help me take a look at the moment by moment actions, my day, hour by hour. So at the end of the day, I can look back and say, well, what did you do in those two major areas that you really want to do it? If I haven't done anything, then there's a bit of a measurement, right? But if I've done significant stuff, then there's a feeling of fulfillment, there's a feeling of satisfaction. And that's the impact on quality, my friend. It's like, for me, like, I've had a great day if I've really hit the significance and the contribution sections of my basic needs, things that are driving me.
Nice.
Pat?
How about you, Tony?
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it, Bob. I was just kind of thinking about those 7 factors for me, and a year ago, I think I would have answered this very differently. Recently I left a corporate gig, started my own businesses, and so that feeling of certainty is less certain for me right now. I mean, I'm a struggling startup founder that's just trying to make things work right now. So certainty is a big driver right now. I came out of a place where things were comfortable, and so less so right now. So that's, a lot of my daily drive, first priority is just making sure that the family is secure and that there's revenue streams and a path forward, and all of that certainty is getting rebuilt, let's say. But then aside from that, I was lucky, and being in the Western world, a lot of growth, I was able to get a lot of significance, work my way up the corporate ladder, and get to that place where I had the title and the office and all the things that I wanted. And now I'm at a place where contribution is much more impactful for me. I've my son has a heart condition where he's going to require multiple open heart surgeries, and so one of the things that I'm doing is my wife and my mom and my family are getting together to run a foundation for him around fundraising for congenital heart defects in newborn babies. And so that's an area where I felt like I could use my platform and my experience from before to be able to contribute to other people. Like, my son was lucky. He didn't have to take out loans to pay for his surgeries because we're in Vancouver, where we have Canadian healthcare, social healthcare, right? So he was able to get very complicated and probably expensive surgeries at no cost. Whereas I hear colleagues very similar to myself, just they happen to be in the United States with a very different healthcare system, and they aren't able to pay for things, or it's much more crippling to them, right? And so this is more one area where I can give back and give this contribution back into places, right? And same thing with my endeavors into the fitness industry, and that it's all sort of around contribution back into places, building around that certainty. And I think just personally, growth is a big driver for me. I mean, I'm always reading, always researching, always trying to build new stuff. I mean, almost to a fault, but I think those are the main drivers for me, and that's kind of what drives day to day.
Excellent answer.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So if I were to share my driving needs, it's an awareness that just happened for me over these last several months too, as I've been contemplating it. So it's always been significance and certainty that were my driving needs. Those are my primal needs that I want, both for financial security and for the significance, which is really bringing value to people. I've wanted to do as a consultant and helping guide growth in different businesses, to leading different companies that I've owned and operated. That's been my focus, achieving that. Now, over these last several months, and especially with the birth and the starting up of The Uncommon Truth with you guys, growth and contribution are really the driving needs that bring the significance and the certainty. If I were being 100% transparent that way, my goal and outcome of guiding growth for myself, and therefore sharing that story with others through The Uncommon Truth, I can't have those primal needs of significance or certainty fulfilled if I don't bring value and I don't grow. So that growth and contribution it's kind of flipped to be the foundation of where it's at. That the path to those is through growth and contribution. That really leads me to a thought that, as you're both speaking and I'm hearing it, is it's back to that form of life as well that is such a big part of it. Those chunks that we choose to compartmentalize our life. And Bob, we have an exercise that we do in some of our programs called the Wheel of Life, and that things can get out of balance at times and the wheel goes clunkety clunk. I've had and the reason where form came from is I needed to bring it down into smaller pieces. I could manage it, and I could actually create a role or an identity, a outcome that I wanted to achieve in each area. So I thought it'd be good to just share briefly that, and it will lead into really the next question, which is a sub question, is how do we improve our quality of life right now, right? What are the steps we can take and should we take in our life? Well, if we can't define our ideal form of life or chunk it up as to what the priorities of our life is, we're lost. We don't even know where to start. We need to define a map, right? So we're going to talk a lot about this over the coming weeks and episodes. But for me, I'm just going to share is that my form stands for this. And I created a role and an outcome that I want to create. So in my relationships, whether it be with you guys, friends and colleagues, to my girlfriend, to my son, I want to be a master of magical moments. A master of magical moments. So how do I create a magical moment in all my relationships? And I've made that kind of a fun phrase, and all of them I'm kind of call it my super power, my superhuman goal that I'd like to have. If I ran and did everything to my very best, then I'd create a magical moment in my relationships. The occupation side, well, my theme is I really want to guide growth and bring value. What's that? I want to empower people, right? Then recreation. Well, I want to become a world-class athlete. Doesn't mean I'm going to be Tiger Woods as I'm a golf addict. No, that's not the point. The point is I want to live by the habits as a world-class athlete. As my son gave me this, show it here. I'm really pleased. The most jacked grandpa. Got a grandchild coming. I keep saying grandson, hoping. But anyways, in about 6 more months. So that's something there. That how do we be and live to our highest and best in each of these areas? And then lastly, I want to be a motivator of motivators. That's not that I'm the best of motivators, but you have to be motivated to motivate. So how do I always focus on education and growing and surrounding myself with men like yourself, where iron sharpens iron, that we're making each other better, we're challenging, that we're asking better quality questions. So that really is just kind of a summary as to why I feel that my driving needs have shifted into growth and contribution, is because if I'm not there, I can't achieve these outcomes in each of the 4 chunks of my life. So that leads to that. So how do we improve our quality of life now? Not tomorrow, not looking backwards at yesterday, but right now. And what are the steps we can take and should we take right now, guys? Go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Heath. Just going back to your example, Heath, was a terrific example. You can see that you've kind of, because you understand human needs and your need for significance, you can actually set concrete goals, and you have set concrete goals. It's like, if I want to be significant, I want to be a significant athlete, as an example, right? So it's not the other way around. You understand your need for significance, and then you kind of set the goal. Like, I suppose you can do it the other way around too, but it's very helpful to really understand the driver of that and set the goals from that, because then you can take action on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis to move towards that. You can build all your rituals, all your habits, your daily action plan around that particular goal. So for me, it comes from that basic understanding of needs. You set some goals based on those needs, and then you're on to improving your quality of life in the now. Let's take a second and look at it the other way around. If you don't understand those needs, often younger people, perhaps myself in my youth, would take the second, one of the second needs, variety, is really important. It's like, geez, I'm a young person, I'm 22, 23, 24, 25. Variety is really important to me because I want that. I want variety. I want adventure. I want leisure, right? And then you go on, you kind of take the next 5 or 6 years and you just kind of go off and explore a whole bunch of stuff. And sure, there's growth and sure, there's learning to it. But during that time, I see people struggling because some of their primary basic needs, like the need for certainty, the need for real connection with people in stable relationships, they're not being met. So their wants overcome their real needs. So that's my point, I guess, is that often to improve your quality of life, you have to really understand the needs and not be driven by your wants. Wants can take you, can be considered as desires, and while they're maybe important, while they may be fun, sometimes they're not productive. They're not going to help you improve the quality of your life. Lots and lots of young people around the world are spending thousands and thousands of hours every year downstairs gaming. And gaming's great, right? But if you're if your needs are something else, you have a massive need for significance or a massive need for connection with other people. Maybe they're being met that way, but maybe that's not the best thing to do to improve the quality of your life. So it's an individual thing, as Tony mentioned, to look through these, the needs, and figure out where you are right now. But that's pragmatically the thing we can do is take some time, figure out what's most important to us, and spend time on that.
Tony, well said, Bob.
Yeah, no, that was good. I'm gonna hone in on the goals side of things. A quick sidebar on the video game thing. The guy that won the last Fortnite tournament just won $2 million, and I think he was like 17 or 18 or something like that. So, video games used to not be able to provide that certainty, but now they're making a decent number of certainties. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess I just got to start working these out more, right?
But at the same time, in practicality, everything that you guys just mentioned is totally what happens kind of underneath the hood. I think a lot of people are maybe more basic than that, and I really like the goal setting because I think you get to the same result, right? And so if I was going to be very, very practical, and somebody came to me and said, I'm quarantined in my house right now. I don't know what to do. There's some uncertainty in this part of my life. There's some uncertainty in this part of my life. I'm either going to have a baby or get divorced, or I'm either going to find a new job or get fired, or there's just a whole lot of questions in those kind of places. I think the advice that I would give them is to start with that goal setting. I mean, it's what I would do in a business environment when things are very structured and there needs to be a very clear output from the time. And it's the old adage of SMART goals, right? Very specific and measurable and action oriented and result focused and time based, so that you can very clearly lay those plans out, right? And so it sounds very structured, but at the end of the day, it plays out like, okay, you're stuck in your house. You're going to be in your house for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it happens to be. Make a plan for your nutrition. You're not going to be able to get the food that you normally want, nor are you going to be able to go get the garbage, greasy food on the run because you're stuck at home. So you both have an opportunity and a challenge to focus on your nutrition, right? And you know that nutrition will give you some sort of positive feeling, some positive energy or something like that comes out of it. And ultimately, that'll help you maybe, be more friendly to your spouse, or, be able to give that much more time to your family and give that value back, right? But it starts with those sort of foundational goals. And if you lay out 2, 3, 4 of those that are just kind of important for you based on what you genuinely, truly know, you can almost look at those on a matrix and go, all right, those 2 fulfill my needs for certainty. Those 2 fulfill my needs for growth. These ones fulfill my need for connection. This feels good. Now I'm going to break this back down into my daily sort of habits. And you have to reset your goals, because the goals pre-COVID are not the goals during COVID, and they should not be the goals post-COVID. But you should make the most of this time and realize that you're going to be in this place for a little bit. So you use this as an opportunity. Maybe you want to learn how to cook because you've never had time to do it, and now you've got no choice because all the restaurants are closed, right? So build on these things, figure out some goals, learn a language, do whatever it happens to be, but work on this time kind of under specific goals. Use it like it's a little bit of a sprint to power through something that you normally wouldn't get the chance to do, and set yourself up for sort of post-COVID in that way.
I love it. I agree with both of you. They both fit. So like left hand, right hand, right? I think you have to start with that goal, that outcome, that result that you really, really want. But at the end of the day, you do have to create, as I always say, the rituals that will drive that result. So I've been accused by a few people that I set maybe goals that might be either too high or too many at one time. And I would agree that I've learned here over this last 51 years that less is more, and which leads into focus. Because if we focus, it'll bring clarity, and then clarity makes it simple. And so I guess what I'd like to kind of share is that if we are going to set goals, and this is a statement, but it's all from my view and my belief, it's also going to lead to the next question, right? But if we start with the end in mind, I believe that you reverse engineer everything back. So you know if it's a 5-step process to get that result or that goal achieved, then you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 1 is the first step. I don't need to worry about 2, 4, 5. 1. I need to start it and finish it and be solely focused to that. And that needs to be an obsessive almost behavior, an obsession in a positive way, that it's focused. That then, upon completion, we get the feelings that we want and the needs met. You're significant because you accomplished it. You're certain that you made progress, which brings fulfillment, right? Which is growth. And you're giving to yourself. And then you do step 2, then to step 3, etc. But I quite often go, I think I can jump right to step 4. And then I hit step 3 and my face goes whack right in the ground. And I go, okay, maybe I should go back to step 1 and just deal with that. So with fitness, let's just use that as a simple analogy for all of us. We're in COVID-19 world and we're inside. So I'm used to going to the gym. I do kettlebells. I do all kinds of different training. I have to train with bands now. I use my body weight. I'm doing push-ups. I'm doing pull-ups. I'm doing air squats, and I'm doing them for long periods of time. But the point is, I'm doing. And if we want to know and define that result, that outcome, ultimately, we have this beautiful technology called YouTube. You can YouTube almost anything. I think it's actually the #1 search engine now in the world for how-tos. I'm talking about, how-tos, because it doesn't matter what I put in there. There's someone with an opinion or a thought on how to do that. And how do we create that ritual? So see what people are doing that have what you want, and then simply copy it. We don't have to create it. We can copy it. So I think this is just a bit of a segue that pick something in each of the chunks of your life, one thing. That's maybe 4 goals in total then for me: a relationship goal, a work goal, a health and wellness, recreation goal, and then an education, motivation goal. And then do it. That's it. Dream about it, decide, document, do it. That's it. So that leads us into, how do we do that? And is obsession a good thing? And what do we avoid? What do we need to avoid, and why do we avoid that in achieving these goals? Because immediately all the excuses come, all the resistance comes the minute we set a goal. At least that's what I found. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? What do we need to avoid doing, and why to avoid the procrastination and the negative thought patterns that immediately hit us the minute we set a good goal?
It seems that we're all very practiced at setting goals, structuring our days, moving ahead in one way or another. And we've talked about the truth, which is there are human needs. We've talked about the truth that there's these different sections in our life. We've talked about the truth of taking action and setting goals, which is these are very important to improving the quality of your life. A question that comes to me right now is, why don't people do that? Like, why don't they have the rituals? Why don't they pursue their true needs versus their wants or desires, which take them off track? And maybe I'd like to talk a bit about that and pass it on to you guys. So times that I really felt that I excelled. I'll give you an example. I became a manager for the first time, or a supervisor for the first time, in my very, very early 20s. but I didn't know anything about supervision or leadership or management. But I had read something during that era that said if you wanted to become an expert in anything, all you had to do was read one book a month over a 24-month period. That's 24 books, and you would become in the top 10% of people that had knowledge in that, whatever you decided to study. And I don't know if those numbers are true. I probably doubt if they were. Like, who measures that sort of thing? But it made a lot of sense to me. It's like, number one, let's become an expert in something. Number two, there's a lot of benefits when you start to develop expertise. And one of the major benefits is you really feel good about yourself. If you know more about leadership or more about supervision or more about management than most of the people that are in your meetings for business, you're going to be able to contribute at a very high level. And that's going to allow you to feel really good about yourself, but also showcase some talents and abilities, and also move your company forward, which again makes you feel really quite good about yourself. So there's a really amazing cycle of development for you that has a spin-off for your company or your business, spin-off for your family, et cetera, et cetera. So Heath, directly to your question, what should we avoid doing? We should avoid things that stop us from being really, really good at these 7, 8 areas in our life. So if these 7 and 8 areas, things like family, friends, finances, et cetera, are important life things that improve the quality of your life, we should avoid doing things that stop us from being really good at being a father, really good at being a husband, really good at being an uncle or an aunt or a business person or a supervisor or a manager. So the flip side of that is taking the initiative to actually focus on those areas and become expert as we can in those 8 areas. So it's always been a driving force for me. I shouldn't say always. I would say that I learned through the trials and tribulations of life, that if you chose to be a husband, that it was in my control not only just to be a husband, but to be an excellent husband, to be constantly striving to be better at being a husband, and to know that it was a marathon. Being a husband is definitely a marathon. Being 26 years in my 26th year of marriage, it's a marathon of opportunity and experiences, right? So I think that's my contribution to the question. What should we avoid doing and why? Keith, I'll pass it on to Tony.
Yeah, as you were saying that, the word efficiency for some reason was coming to mind, right? And it's and to tie back the whole book analogy to the fitness side of things, reading those books, that one book a month for 24 months is essentially you're exercising your brain, right? You're exercising that muscle at that point. And of course that thing's going to get sharp and it's going to get well trained because you're exercising it, right? And it's much like anything else. Like in fitness, you can't fake a 300-pound back squat. You can't just go from 150 pounds and then put 300 pounds on the bar and then all of a sudden sit there and rip it out. Like you've got to go to a 160 and 170 and 200 and 250. Like you have to go through those steps. And the words that come to mind is almost like practitioner. Like you have to become a practitioner of whatever your craft is. And even if that's being a good husband, it is, you have to be a practitioner of that, right? Listen to other people and their advice, listen to your spouse on what they're saying, listen to your friends about like, what do I do right? What do I do wrong? Right? Like those kind of things. But it all comes back to the habits, right? If you do it once, it's great. It's a data point, but much like doing squats or fitness or running or anything like that, you can't just go run a marathon once and expect to be a pro at it, right? You've got to build up to it and you've got to do it. And like anything else, whether it is a skill that is a knowledge-based skill, or whether it's a muscle you're developing, or whether it's a relationship that you need to build, you need to put kind of drops in the bucket, right? I had a good friend of mine once kind of used the analogy in relationship wise that like you need to put money into the bank before you can make withdrawals, right? And so like every time you go to this sort of relationship and you try to take something from it, right? You need some support or you need something, you need to have had put enough effort into that thing to be able to draw from that, right? And much like any sort of skill or anything like that, you had to have put in the effort to build the skill first before you can go draw on that in an efficient way. Otherwise, it's going to be inefficient, it's going to be painful, and it's going to be something that you're not going to want to do. So I think to be very clear about what you should avoid doing is expecting, you know, professional level results with like amateur level input or effort into those things.
Well said.
In anything
Well
that
said.
you want, whether it's being a husband or being a trainer or being an educator, whatever it happens to be, you got to put in the process and you got to put in the work to do it.
Oh, man, those are brilliant, guys. I really couldn't agree with you more. And a word that came into mind, Tony, when you were just speaking was perseverance. You know, when we go and we are setting a goal or an outcome that we want to achieve, that perseverance is actually what ultimately equals our progress. The end of that cycle of change, for sake of a better word, that that progress has as a prerequisite or a requirement to actually achieving the outcome. And that effort that you spoke of, unfortunately, in most cases, whether it be in a gym, whether it be learning a language, whether it be writing a resume to get a new job, brings an activity which creates pain. Mm-hmm. And that perseverance through the pain ultimately is the partner that brings us our growth, the gain, the outcome, and ultimately which leads to that triumph. Mm-hmm. We overcame. So I just want to share something that hit me, and it's our cycle of change that you said that so well. For me, I'm oblivious to something, a new knowledge that you and I and that we're talking about. And then all of a sudden the penny drops. You use the word drops, and it's just like, oh, my technique changed in something. And I'm in a golf swing as an example, and I go, oh, when I do it this way, I generate more club head speed. That awareness is the beginning of change. So we go and drop from this place called oblivious, unconsciously incompetent, to, oh, we're conscious, we're aware, but we also realize that we're incompetent. That's the beginning of growth. It's just straight awareness. And that realizing that, okay, I'm willing to make the effort, the pain that you talked about, which ultimately leads us to a place of competence and the ability to actually do it. And we begin to see progress. It's not the arrival at our destination or that new identity, right? But we become competent. It's like driving the car, right? And we're learning and we're grinding gears, et cetera. And then eventually we start to get smooth and we're able to shift through all those gears. It's only through repetition that you so eloquently led to, and Bob, you too. Repetition is the mother of that skill. Fail. Mm-hmm. The fantastic adventure in learning, that continually persevering through each lesson to improve and to ask the question, what do I need? What do I got to do? What do I got to change? Which will lead us eventually to a new identity, a new mastery level of whatever the skill is that we went out to. And that's unconscious competence. You don't have to think about it. We're able to shift the car, talk on the cell phone, or at least before the laws changed, listen to the music, and do whatever it is else that we were doing. We now are competently able to do that without even thinking about it. And you know, that really is something that just drives those results, which builds more confidence, which leads to more potential. Bob, back to what you said. And then the cycle gets easier. It gets more grooved as we go. So taking a risk is what I'm summarizing the truth about that. What do we need to avoid? Is don't procrastinate. Step forward. You're going to stub your toe. We're going to have failure. Learn from it. Persevere. And ultimately, we're going to make some progress. Maybe not on our timeline that we desired, but we're going to progress.
Just along those lines, let me ask you too this question. So we're talking about improving the quality of life and what we do and what we don't do. It seems to me a summary your perspectives is that perhaps a summary of this is that we should pursue mastery in the areas of life that we want to pursue mastery in. And that means being educated, being persevering in it, sucking up when it's painful, doing the habits and the rituals to become a master in whatever we want to become. Is that, I'd like you to speak to that. Is that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, Tony, you go ahead.
Is that what you're trying to do, Tony? Are you trying to become a master in all these areas of your life? Is that true?
I do look at it that way. You know, I don't like to go into anything without sort of, it's frustrating to be inefficient, right? It's frustrating to be the last guy picked on the baseball team kind of thing, right? Like you don't want to be that. So yeah, I do. If I'm going to go at something, I go very intensely at it. So yeah.
So, but it really is either a conscious or unconscious thing. Just knowing you a little bit, that you're really whether it's being a father to your kids, being a husband, being a business person, being a friend, you're trying to master all those things, aren't you?
Trying to, yeah, and not successfully always, but I'm going to give it my effort.
Well,
yeah.
no, well, of course we're not successful at it, but I mean, even the masters of golf, right, are struggle, right? I mean, this is a lifelong pursuit. That's one of the truths. The uncommon truth is that there are these areas, and I really do think that people that are accessing high qualities of life and are very happy in most of their life situations that's because they're growing and learning, but they're pursuing that mastery. They really are. I know Heath Stone's like that. He is, and this leads Heath into the next question. You are obsessive.
Yeah.
You are obsessive. Well, I mean, when I met Heath, the story there, when I met Heath, he just started the golf, and I was beating the daylights out of him on the golf course, you know, but he wants to become a master, and he's become a master golfer. His handicap is what, 0.05 there? Yeah. 0.5. Yeah. So he's again, that's Heath's, that's part of your, that may be part of your personality, which is a built-in trait, but I think it's also something that you intentionally strive to do because that makes you happiest, that makes you excited about living, that makes you get up each and every day. And I think that that's an uncommon truth as well. Is there's many, many people I know that don't pursue life like that. They watch a ton of TV. They sit around doing unproductive things. They go to the mall shopping a lot. They do these things which we used to call universal activities, which are you do things, but at the end of the day, you don't feel really good about them. You don't feel that you've been contributing. They're not meeting your human needs.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's
another uncommon truth.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think that leads us perfectly, a great segue, brother, into, you know, is obsession really required to be our best? Well, I want to actually shift that word, obsession, to passion. Because the truth is that if we're not passionate about what we're doing, will we be willing to work through the pain to achieve the growth that comes with it? So that would be my question, because I do believe that an obsession and a passion for life is required. And it's what really, I think, drives my life, is that I focus on those things that I love to do with the people I love to do it. That's a great saying, you know, that I heard. But how do we really drive forward in life and live intentionally focused on executing? That's a little acronym I have for life, right? Every day, how do I live intentionally focused on executing on my passion? So guys, is passion really required to be our best? Tony.
I don't see how you can it's like the fuel, right? It's your fuel to whatever it is. I mean, you don't have the motivation to get out and do these things and push yourself and, you know, become better versions of yourself if you don't have passion for it in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I suppose like fear, like kind of the flight or fight kind of response could be there. Like if there's a tremendous amount of fear, that could drive you to be your best. Absolutely. But absence of some harm or some danger being in your life driving you towards that. I think passion is the other driver, right? You really have to have a why for why you're doing it, because ultimately, everything that we do as humans comes with a certain amount of friction, right? Let's call that a cost, right? And so for you to get up out of bed and spend this energy doing these things that you want to do, they have costs. You're choosing not to do other things, and you're choosing to focus on this, and you are, you know, perhaps spending money on golf clubs and things like that, whatever it happens to be, right? But there has to be a motivation, and the pleasure and the pain response that comes from that has to be greater than the fear response that's pulling and preventing you from doing that, right? And so you need to have this passion for it that, you know, makes you feel so good, or the reward is so great, or whatever it happens to be that sort of fulfills that pleasure response that is greater than the pain that comes with the act of doing, the act of training, the act of putting in the work. And so, yeah, I think it generally has to come from a place of passion, for one way, shape, or form. I mean, you may not realize it. It may be like going to work and doing a crappy job doesn't feel like passion, but your passion for your family and the roof that you provide to put over their head is ultimately the underlying passion that maybe you don't necessarily connect, but you get out of bed to do that thing because your family relies on you, and you have this commitment to them and this passion to support your family, and that's where it's all bred from. So yeah, I totally agree.
Nice.
Well said, Tony. Well said. That word passion, it's such it causes such mixed emotions. Not in me, but in many, many people. It's like, what is my passion? What's my purpose? What's my mission? So many people question, don't have an answer for that. And it's an interesting life pursuit, is to try to figure out what your purpose is, what your mission is, and what your passions are. So you can have children, but not be a passionate parent, right? You just have children, but not be a passionate parent. This might tie right back, Heath and Tony, into our understanding our needs. So if I clearly understand my need for significance, then and if I understand the other truth, which is not common, which is there's an opportunity to produce mastery for significance. I have to ask the question, what can I do today to be significant? What can I do today to help somebody else? What can I do today to make an impact in somebody else's life? Which would impact my need, right? So if you ask that question, what can I do today? Then you can passionately attack that. You can set goals, and you can in a very pragmatic, practical way, make a phone call to somebody, send an email to somebody. In my case, what we do is leadership development workshops for companies across North America. So when I ask that question, what can I do today to create more significance? It really makes me take a look at what we're teaching that day, what we're instructing that day, and ask the questions, is there enough inspiration in what we're doing? Is it going to really meet the needs of the people that we're training it for, et cetera, et cetera. So in my business, asking that simple question and being passionate about the answer and trying to achieve mastery, be the best I can possibly be at delivering those workshops, it really does change your mindset. Change your mindset, it changes your practical application of what you're going to do in the next 10 minutes.
The needs and the feelings that we have in our life really are powerful. And that's why we talked earlier about how if we want to know why we did something, all you have to do is ask, okay, what need or feeling is being fulfilled by doing that? And it'll always come back to one of those 6 or 7 needs that we already talked about, depending on which version you looked at. But an interesting fact of something you just alluded to on passion and obsession, another word is, I call it obsessed or addicted with something. I'm going to talk about it in a good way. Our needs, right? Our driving needs, two of them are dominant usually in each of us, as we've each shared today. But when you have more than two needs being met by something, it moves from just a need and a want into what they call obsession or addiction. And the more of the needs that are met, the stronger the attachment to that action or behavior. So what I've just found phenomenal, and we'll use me as a golfer, as you alluded to earlier, what is the likelihood of me to stop golfing unless I have a physical condition or something that would stop it? Well, 0. Why? Well, if I just walk through the first of the 4 primal needs, well, my driving needs are certainty. Well, I'm certain that when I go out golfing, that I'm going to have a good time. I'm certain it's going to be good for my health. I'm certain that I'm going to learn something new. And I'm certain that I'm going to meet some people new, which guess what? Now when I'm on a golf course, it meets second need, which is variety, adventure. I can play all kinds of different golf courses. I can play them from different tees. I meet different people every time I go. I know that with all the hard work I'm putting in, that my game's improving, which does what? Create significance. And then back to what I just alluded to earlier, I connect with people. I'm in golf tournaments. I'm playing with the men's club. I'm doing all kinds of different things and getting my need for connection met. So I've hit 4 out of 4 just of the primal. And I actually alluded to growth and contribution. I can do contribution because now I'm playing with a group and someone's struggling and I can give a tip. I can help them improve. And then they see immediate results with just simple little things of guidance. Holy crow, what's the likelihood that he's ever going to stop golfing with that many of my emotional needs being met by that activity? And if we each look at our habits, you're going to see that the habits usually have 2 to 4 of our needs being met because we're repeating them all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's my 2 thoughts on that whole aspect of the obsession and how we do it. So if we really want to succeed and create those rituals, and the habits that Tony and you and I've been talking about, I don't think obsession or passion can be taken out of the equation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have to always be asking the question, though, too, if we're keeping things into a perspective that's real, and it becomes negative when it becomes detrimental to myself and to others in the time, i.e. if it's going to cost me my job because I'm only golfing, I'm not going to work on time, not a good thing, and so on and so forth. That's how most people view it. But as long as it's having positive growth and in our life, embrace it.
So, Heath, I really love your comment about selecting activities or taking activities that we do and ensuring that we're hitting more than one need, right? Or identifying that they're hitting more need. I love your comment. It's so bang on. If you can hit as many needs as you can, you're going to get way more benefit from that, which will in turn improve the quality of your life. Yeah. Another example to build on that is I'm a bike rider, right? So let's say I put the bike on the car. I hop in the car. I fire on a podcast, which directly relates to my business. So I'm going to learn from somebody else about leadership development, let's say. So now I'm listening and I'm being inspired by somebody else in the car. And as I'm driving, right, to where I get on my bike and I'm going to have an hour and a half bike ride. But I use that time to actually take the information that I got in the car and start to strategically plan about how I'm going to use that in my next workshops or in my business, right? So the bike riding time is brilliant because you're in the outdoors, you're working on your health, but you're also strategically planning for your business. It's your strategic planning time. So I know that's worked for me for many, many years is selecting activities and using those activities to their maximum potential.
like think about entrepreneurs, right? Or even just like career progression, right? When you start out your career, a lot of the times you maybe do a job in a field that you're passionate about, but ultimately you're always trying to align and get into an industry that you're also passionate about, or a retailer that you're always passionate about, or a company that you're passionate about, like whatever those things. But I mean, ultimately, at least in my experience, you're kind of always trying to progress to combine a bunch of these things into one role or one drive or one focus, let's say, right? You know, if you can work in a job or a career that is an industry in a sport or something that you love, doing the skills and the techniques that you're efficient and passionate about, like that's kind of the ideal form of life, right? Where you can have, you know, the money be enough that you want, and you start combining all of these type of things, right? So whether it be activities or your career, I think it's very clear that if you could choose your own path, you would probably combine and have your one focus be a thing that gives you fulfillment in a bunch of these different areas. And that would be like your ideal space, right? And I think people just naturally try to gravitate towards combining a lot of those things, maybe subconsciously though.
Oh, Tony, that to me, that really, really resonated how you really wrapped it up for us. I really appreciate that, and how it segues into our last question so perfectly as well. What does the ideal form of life mean, and what is yours? What is both of your ideal form of life? So if I could sort of segue it, I'm going to give 3 acronyms to what the ideal form of life is. And then from that, we'll have our final sort of discussion on it. So ideal form of life. Ideal for me means that it's up to me. I'm accountable. To do what? D, I need to dream. I need to decide. I need to actually document it and make it real. And lastly, I need to do it. What does the E stand for? Well, I need to eliminate everything that doesn't do D. And then how am I going to do that? I need to automate my process, because otherwise it's messy. And how do I automate it? Create habits and rituals that will get me D, the results that I'm looking for, that I dreamed about. And then lastly, I just need to live it and learn by doing it. So it's really about the D. Just dreaming, deciding, documenting, and doing, taking action and failing forward, as you and I talked about, Tony, before. So form, we've talked about form. What are the chunks of your life? I've broken it into 4. It helps me stay focused, right? And that is what family and friends, occupation, work and wealth, recreation, health and wellness, and M is motivation. What are the chunks of your life that are important to you? And then lastly, what is life? Well, if I've defined it in my ideal framework in the 4 areas, or the areas of my life, it's really just living intentionally focused on executing. I've got a whole bunch of other acronyms. I get teased by my friends on the acronym king, but the point is, you know, how do I do it? How do I just live intentionally focused on executing? And that's really the question. What is your guys' ideal form of life? And how do we do that? How do we just stay focused, be clear, and keep it simple? Go ahead, Bob. Or Tony, let's change it up. You start, Tony.
I was just gonna say, I was like, I have recently sort of tried to craft my ideal form of life. You know, so for me, it is the path that I'm on. It involves a work environment where it is flexible around family. I think is really kind of the main anchor in everything. You know, I could have gone a lot of ways in a recent career shift, but for me, everything anchored around family, right? Being able to have the flexibility to drive kids to school or cover for a dentist appointment or something like that. Like whatever I did in business had to work around that. And so I've got that in place. And the other aspects of it is leading and building and kind of having the autonomy to sort of head down on my own path and being in control of my own fate, I guess is maybe more so what it is. I'm putting myself in a place to do that. And then combined with some physical wellness. I have a very young kid, so I guess my 1.5-year-old was born when I was 36. So, I've always done the math in my head that I'm like, okay, when this kid's 20 and in his prime, how old am I going to be, and how fit do I need to be at that age to be able to still take this kid out? So, that's kind of my that's a big part of what I drive for. So it's finding time around the family is an ideal form of life, doing a job where I have the control of my own fate in a business that I love or an industry that I love, and being able to have the time on a day-to-day basis to be able to stay fit and stay healthy and be able to keep up with those kids as they get older. That's my ideal form of life.
That's
Tony,
awesome.
That is awesome. Tony, just a question on that. You started that piece out by saying, I just recently started to control or craft my ideal form of life. Can you just speak on that a bit? What was the turning point for you? What was the realization? Like, why?
So I worked in Silicon Valley, corporate America, California, Fortune 100 company for the last 5 years. And I was given an option, come move down to Irvine, California, and take this office on the 4th floor of our global headquarters and be a vice president for this multi-billion-dollar division and do all of these things. But it came with the fact that I would have to move to California, and having a son with open heart, with a congenital heart defect that required open heart surgery. The healthcare and everything down there is fine. That is not the issue. It is the fact that there's a consistency of care kind of through it. And my son has had his heart operated on twice by the same man. So literally the surgeon at BC Children's Hospital here has seen my son's heart and fixed it twice. And he has at least one more surgery going forward. And it's like a mechanic on a car, right? The mechanic knows everything that's happened in his own car. But you bring a new car in and some stuff is, being worked together and whatever else, that mechanic may not have the background and may not make the same decisions as the original mechanic that owns it, right? And so it came down to that didn't matter what the career was, didn't matter what anything else was. It was the fact that I couldn't put that on my son and force him to change that care. And I would never be able to live with myself if something happened later on in life. And so that forced me to walk away from that career. And so I was left with do I go to work for somebody else, or do I go ahead and do I build my own business? And I didn't like the idea of going to work for somebody else anymore. So I was basically left with going, okay, if you're going to build your own business, what the hell are you going to do? And so I made it in the CrossFit industry, in the health and fitness industry. I made it around stuff that I know, building software and technology. I continue to do advisory type work. I built it so that I could work from anywhere in the world. My team is 100% remote. So I was given the options, and luckily I worked my butt off for a bunch of years to be able to put myself in a place to do that. And so I crafted what I want.
Yeah. Well, great story, Tony. Thank you. And, I think this is really encouraging. It's encouraging for me, even at my age, but it's also, I think, very encouraging for other people to hear that it can be done. It's quite interesting, though, you were forced to do it. It's almost like you were forced to a point where you had to quit, and then you had the options. But the uncommon truth is anybody can do that at any time.
True.
They literally don't have to wait till they're forced to do it. But because we're humans, we don't have to be slaves to that job that we don't like. We don't have to be slaves to that company that isn't treating us well, or we're not getting the fulfillment. It's not meeting our needs. But it's so hard for people to look at that and make the changes. Just a very small thing in my life is I remember my wife was struggling because she wasn't spending enough time with her young child when they were as an infant, because she had an intense job, right? But one day she decided, I'm going to go ask for a 4-day week. went in and asked for a 4-day week, and the guy said, sure, no problem. And it's like, whoa, you know, it's like, that was a massive change in my life, the child's life, her life, right? But that it was so hard for her to do that. It was like, it was beyond the scope of what she thought was possible. And I think that probably goes back to the fears. We talked about this in episodes past, and we'll talk about it again, Heath. The fear that we have, that we don't have the ability to change. We won't be able to do it. People will say no. What will people think, et cetera, et cetera. So, good story.
Well, you know, guys, I think it's very dynamic, you know, what we're talking about here, and trying to live an ideal form of life, and it changes at different times, different seasons, and different reasons. We've talked a lot about everything happens for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. The wise man was able to figure out which one it is. So for me, it was quite interesting. Bob, if I'll jump in and then you could share. But as a young man, I was a policeman and worked with VPD, and the lifestyle, I loved it. And a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and it really was meeting my need to empower and try to help people, right? Then I came to the truth and the realization that you really can't help people that don't want to be helped. And the journey and the stress and different things of that job began to stick. Ultimately, it cost me my health, and I ended up becoming a type 1 diabetic. And Bob, you know that story, and Tony, but it drastically changed my life, because I was always healthy. I was always fit and an elite athlete, and to lose that terrified me. And I went back and had a great career, and I was treated so well afterwards by the department. But I came to a realization that I wasn't going to be able to be healthy. And that changed my life drastically, to the place where my relationships were being affected by the job, my physical health was being affected, my mental outlook on life was being affected. So I chose to jump, and Bob was a big part of that. And in my journey as a friend, and the group of men that were holding me accountable at that time. And so I jumped into the self-employment world and went into business. But ultimately it was so I could have a healthy life in all areas of my form, my relationships, my finances, my health, and ultimately the ability to be free, to be able to choose. And that is how I ended up being in that place where I had to change. And since then, 30 years has transpired, and I'm once again beginning a new season, a new chapter of life with the Uncommon Truth, with new colleagues, new friends. And I'm so excited about the transition. And I think that is a segue for us, really, Bob. Maybe you can touch on that. Is from your ideal form of life, you've always been about transformation and transition. And that's really what us in the Uncommon Truth is about. What our whole topic of, and we'll be talking about hopefully for years, about how do we transition and grow? How do we become something better? That's it. So what's your ideal form of life, Bob, and how are you focused on that?
Well, when I was a young man, I graduated from university, and one of my first jobs that I got was I was becoming a camp director for youth. And so I got an opportunity to work very closely with youth in a camp setting. That's a very inspirational setting. So we're using recreational activities actually to build character, build virtues in children, right? To help them develop and grow in a way. So I got a great flavor for what it was like to have an impact on another human being simply by being there or developing a program. So it was the YMYWCA. The YMYWCA had a concept, mind, body, and spirit. And that was really the first time that I was introduced to the concept of spirit. It's like, spirit? What spirit? So I was intrigued with this spirit thing. And because I was a reader, I started to actually investigate the whole spirit thing. Now I would add another quadrant to that. I love mind, body, and spirit because it's very simple. Your mind, your body, and this other side that people don't really understand very well. But it's speaks powerfully to something that could be important. So I would add relationships to that as well, right? I say, so if I look at my mission, it's like mind, body, spirit, and relationships. But that's the way I look at life. But that spiritual component became very important. And I started to look at the reality of spirit. Is there such thing as faith? Is there such thing as God? Is there such thing as a powerful force that can't be explained in life? And I actually took a long time to do that. And I was obsessed. I was obsessed with this answer, because a lot of people said there was, but there was a lot of people at the time saying, no, that's just false. That's false, man. And so at the end of the day, by age 28, I had committed to spirit. I committed to faith. And I totally am to this day a faithful spiritual person. So I would say that each and every day, my ideal form of life is understanding that there's something more powerful than me. And that gives me strength. Honestly, that took away all my fear. Like, if I committed so that I don't have any fear about anything that I do. That was a powerful step to remove fear. So every day I do something that's spiritual or faithful. I've got a pragmatic, practical set of rituals that I do that keeps me strong. So then I also, my ideal form of life is I work on myself, my mind, my body, and my intentionality. So I get up each and every day and I wonder, in my roles in my life, how can I be better? How can I be a master at being an uncle? How can I be a master at being a friend? How can I be a master at being a leadership development expert? So I work on those things too. And primary to that is my relationship with my wife. So I chose her for life. She's committed to life with me, the crazy woman that she is. And so I want to be strong with her. And then we try to be a couple. So I try to make us a couple, so we're strong together. So I try to provide leadership there, accept the leadership that she gives me as well. And we try to be strong for our kids. So you can see the linear progression here. Faith, myself, strong for my wife, strong as a couple. And now I got kids too, right? And now I got that family. So I'm a strong family. And if I can be a strong family, then I can be a strong community member as well. Our family can have an impact in the community. And so that's how I look at life. I look at life in that structure each and every day. I get up and try to do that each and every day, a little bit here, a little bit there, take a step here. And I guess the last thing I would say, Heath and Tony, is I try to be original and creative. I try to do different things. So one of the things I do to keep my relationship strong with my wife is I cook for our family. It's our family too. She works long hours. It's a passion for me to cook. So I try to be creative in the cooking. So I become an expert at Persian cooking, Thai cooking, Japanese cooking, Canadian cooking, of course, right? Mexican cooking. Over my life, what's that called? That's called obsession, man. It's because I took on cooking. It's the pursuit of mastery of cooking. So, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens around our dinner table, right? Our dinner table, there's unique food probably going out. There's unique food a couple of nights ago, never prepared stuff, and it creates conversation. When you're breaking bread with people, relationships are built. If you have some really interesting questions to ask during that meal, right? Perspectives are brought on. We had a philosophical forum the other night where I'd written down philosophical questions that we're sitting around eating, and I'm asking questions like we're asking right now. Like we're asking each other right now, like, what is the meaning of life? Or there were actual quotes from people, right? And I said, what do you think about that quote? And all of a sudden there's discussion going around this dinner table. So exciting for me and everybody else, it seemed. So yeah, I don't know, Heath, I hope that's clear enough.
No, I think this conversation has been extremely good today. You know, I'm really welcoming as we're continuing to tackle these hard questions about life that, and just really getting into truthful answers about where we each are, where we're at, and how we got where we've gotten, and how are we going to help others get there. So I think it's a good segue into what we'll be talking about in the next sessions that we're going to be going and bringing out here at the Uncommon Truth, and that's, not procrastinating. How do we predict our future? How do we create that map, that ideal form of life, and several others. But I really want to thank you guys and just try to do a really brief summary from each of us on the uncommon truth about these three questions. How do we improve our quality of life? Well, I think the consensus that I got was we got to really identify the outcomes and the goals that we want, and be real about what our human needs are. What's driving our actions, our behaviors, our feelings, and how are we going to just live with passion? And that was actually the answer I think we came up with. Is obsession or passion a key element in becoming our best? And I think we all agreed that passion and obsession, and even I use the word addiction in a positive way, that we have got to want something so badly that we're willing to put up with the pain, which is the partner to the growth. And when we're willing to persevere and work through the pain, we end up with the reward of growth, progression, which ultimately leads to fulfilling and a quality of life that we're all desiring. And I think you really summarized it well, and you and I are so aligned on that area. And Tony, we've talked a little bit about spiritual issues together, but wherever each of us comes from, we need to take the time to define our ideal form of life. It can be done in 20 minutes, but realistically, it takes a couple of hours and probably a couple of sessions, because you're going to go back and ask the questions of, what do I really believe in the spiritual world? What do I really believe about my soul, which is who I really am? My mind, my will, my emotions, all of that gets bundled up in there. And then lastly, what do I want for my body, my life, my physical health, so that, Tony, as you said, I'm going to be around to be that exuberant father when my children are adults, or me trying to be the most jacked grandpa so that I can run around with my grandkids at early morning hockey practices or whatever it is that they choose to do, but be that. But I think, Bob, you really eloquently brought it, that the three components of being a human being, and human, we actually look up the meaning of it, is humus and man. Humus means dirt. Man is spirit. It's a spirit in a dirt body. So we all as human beings, and being is living, is us trying to bring an integrated approach to life, which involves our spirit, which involves our soul, our mind, and our body. So as we move forward and we continue to ask these tough questions and seek to find the uncommon truth about it, I think the real thing that I've taken from this is we're going to need to dig into more discussing about that ideal form of life, and how do we live it, and how do we really live those primary questions that we all have in our life. What would you guys like to give as closing comments?
For me, spirituality is something that I was not raised with. I married into a Catholic family. My wife is Catholic, so I kind of went from like 0 to 60 very, very quickly. And so I've kind of come to this place where, I respect and support everything that, that she was raised to believe. But I think regardless of whether it's spirit, I think it comes down to almost like this greater purpose, right? And some people say like the universe has brought this to me. Some people say, my faith, my God, whatever it happens to be. It really doesn't matter whatever your sort of North Star is, or your guiding purpose is. It's important, I think, that you understand what that purpose is and what your true kind of why, and your actual, if you were going to die today, could you look back and feel good about where you spent your energy and that sort of thing? And whatever that happens to be, I think you have to feel good about that first, and then the rest of the stuff will ultimately be okay. You know, if you feel like you're waking up and you're doing the right thing, and you are moving in the directions that you want to, and you're being good to all your beliefs, and you feel like you made that progress, you're heading in the right step. How quickly you get there will determine on how well you plan. I would argue that, you know, you're not ever going to build anything of any significance without a good plan in place. Otherwise, the thing's just going to fall apart. So, knowing what your purpose is, having the plan and the foresight and the diligence to be able to follow it through, will ultimately lead to, on a day-to-day basis, I think you feeling good about where you end up.
That's well said. Really well said. Bob?
Yeah, I'll just build excellent comments, gentlemen. Thank you so much for today. I would build by saying life is just time. That's our life, is we've got some time, and we've got some time today. And what I do in the next 2 hours has been planned out. It's intentional. It's going to meet my needs. I hope it's the best thing I could possibly be doing. I think it is, based on my knowledge and my experience. It has been. It's intentionally planned out, and I'm going to go ahead and do it for the next 2 hours, and I'll get something out of it. I'll move ahead. I'll grow in some way, shape, or form, hopefully, through the whole process. And tomorrow I begin again, right? And I do that out. So I've learned that I do that out in blocks of a week, right? A week here, a week there, a week here. But it's got the end in mind. Like, for us to, we're building a private college, right? Private college. We're a year into the process, and we still haven't done our first activity. We're at first class. We'll probably still have 6 more months to go, right? So it takes time to do this, but the end in mind, private college, and then you take steps moving towards the private college.
Very well said. Thank you, Bob. Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, for me, that's quality of life.
Well said. You're a contributor, that's for sure. Both of you are. Well, as a closing remark, I can't think of anything better. I'd just like to say, chance favors a prepared mind. So let's plan our life and live our plan. So let's just keep moving forward and continue to ask these hard questions about life, and to keep seeking those answers and finding the uncommon truth together. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to talking again and seeing all of you again who are watching. Thanks again. Cheers and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.